So one of the most important things for us as strength and conditioning coaches is helping reduce the risk of injury. Injury is very common in tennis, and we need to make sure that we can find ways in which to help reduce that potential risk. So we're going to go through 3 exercises from 4 particular areas where we can help reduce the risk of injury, but also help your recovery as well. So the first group of exercises we're going to go through is releasing certain areas in the body. Now, in tennis, 2 of the common areas are around the shoulders and the thoracic spine here, between your shoulder blades and working down your back, and also your hips. So we're going to go through 3 exercises focusing on those areas. So the first exercise here that Dean's going to demonstrate is where we're looking to foam roll the upper back here around his shoulders and between his shoulder blades. So Dean's doing a really great demonstration here. He's supporting his neck, his trunk is nice and stable, and also you can use this as a little bit of a 2-for-1 because he's also using his glutes to drive up as he comes through. Now the aim here is to find a tight point and hold it on there for 20 to 30 seconds to help release that area. Thanks, Dean. The next area we're going to focus on are our lats. Again, linked to our shoulders and down here, the side of our back. So again, Dean's going to get in a really strong position to do this exercise. So he's strong in his trunk, and he's working here just under his arm. And again, you want to try and hold that position for 20 to 30 seconds on the tight point, because what that allows is that allows the blood to flow to the area and help increase the pliability of the muscles and the soft tissue around that area. Great, thanks, Dean. And then the third demonstration we're going to do is we're going to focus on the side part of the hip here. So the hips are tight very often in tennis players, but also everyday life, sitting in a car, sitting at a desk, really reduces the flexibility of those hips. So once again, Dean's focusing there on a really good position. He's stable in his back there, stable in his trunk, and he's just tilting just to the side here on the side of his hip, just to try and hit that muscle there just on the side. And again, he's looking to hold that for 20 to 30 seconds. This exercise, again, can be a 2-in-1 because you also may get a stretch down the side of your hip. So there are 3 areas that you can release as a tennis player to not only help your performance on court, begin to the process of recovery and also increasing flexibility and mobility, but also it's going to help your health and well-being as well.
And just like Johnny had just mentioned, we're talking about performance on court. So mobility is one of the biggest things that we're looking for in terms of putting into our program that's really, really going to aid in that performance on court. So I'm going to give you my 3 go-tos for mobility and kind of go joint by joint. The first one that we're going to do is just he's going to be laying on his back, and we're just going to be calling them floor slides. So your arms are going to be about at a 90-degree angle, and we're really, really looking at that good external rotation right now. So if any tennis player looked at this position, what would that look like? It would look like a really, really good open serve position. So now all I'm going to cue Dean to do is to just lift his arms straight back, keeping tension the entire time. And that's perfect. One of the other things that we're really going to be looking at is, can that athlete maintain a pelvic tilt that entire time? So I should not be able to slide my hand underneath his lower back at all. So he could be able to pelvic tilt. He has good range of motion up top, and that's a great exercise right there. Now we're going to try to target the hamstrings and also a little bit of hip mobility as well. So we're going to start with both legs straight. I'm going to just ask Dean to bring one leg up as high as he can, and then he's just going to slowly rotate it out across his body. Perfect. And then once you get to kind of your end range of motion, you're just going to trace your steps back, bring that leg back over, and then back down. And then this is almost a good self-checker. Now I'll have him do the opposite side for me. If you lift one leg perfectly up, and you can kind of see what the range of motion is on the other side. So this kind of gives yourself, that really great mobility, but it's also a good self-test to see, is my right leg and my left leg as symmetrical as they need to be? Awesome, Dean, thank you. The last one is, it's going to be for that lower back. So just like Johnny had mentioned, sitting in a desk all day, if you commute to work, these are all the things that we need to think about, just how our lifestyle also interacts with just our tennis as well. So you're going to see his knees in this great tabletop position right here, and then I'm just going to ask him to go into a little bit of a lumbar rotation. Great. So this is really just going to help open up that lower back as much as possible. So we really, really want to focus on those shoulders, those hamstrings, those hips, and that lower back. Those are really going to be our key areas of focus for our tennis players and just to make yourselves great athletes in general.
So hopefully you can see there the foam rolling and the mobility work are focusing on the two areas, the shoulders and the hip area. So now I'm going to go on some flexibility exercises which will help the stretch tolerance of the muscle and the connective tissue around there. So if I can ask Dean if you'd just like to stand up. And all the exercises that Trevor and myself are showing you are really simple, easy exercises that you can do anywhere you want. You can do them at home, in a hotel, as part of your cool down, some of them as part of your warm up, for example, the foam rolling and the mobility exercises. But now these flexibility exercises are generally going to be done at the end of your tennis. So the first exercise I'm going to ask Dean to do is he's going to start a nice wide base there position. Okay, he's going to bring his shoulders back and down. He's going to brace that trunk. He's going to think about pushing that hip under. And really simply, all I'm going to ask him to do is bring up his arm and then just slowly take that arm across, working on the posterior part here of the shoulders, so the back of the shoulders. And with these stretches, we're looking to hold them for around 30 to 60 seconds and anywhere between 2 to 3 sets of that. So this is our first one. This is for our shoulder. The second one I'm going to ask Dean to do is the sleeper stretch. So I'd like to ask Dean to just lie on the side there. So the sleeper stretch is a really important exercise for the tennis player because as a tennis player, we get internally with our range of motion from our shoulder very tight. So this one here is working on developing the flexibility in that area. So I'm going to ask Dean very carefully here. He set up a brilliant position, a 90-degree position with his elbow in line with his shoulder and a really good, straight, strong posture again. I'm going to ask Dean to very slowly bring that hand and arm down and find that position where he feels the stretch. Now, it's really important when we're doing this stretch, we really don't push our arm down aggressively. It should be slow and controlled, finding that position. Thanks, Dean. And then the very last one, I'm going to ask Dean to go on to working on the side of his hip, the flexibility on the side of his hip. So this is a piriformis stretch. So, Dean, if you can set that one up for me, please. So very much like the foam roller position there. So the aim again here, we're trying to stretch that side part of the hip. And again, really good posture there. Dean's thinking about holding that trunk down to the ground, great alignment. And again, never force a position. Never force the position that your body doesn't want to go to. Gradually build the stretch up and hold that position for around 30 to 60 seconds. Thanks.
Now we're going to transition into our last part, which I think might be one of the most important, and that's stability. So without stability, we don't have the ability to move well on court. We don't have that good range of motion that we need without that stability of our joints. And this is also a great activation. So it kind of ties in well that we're doing this last, that this is something that you could do right before you go out onto the court, and then tie all of these exercises in together. So the first one I'm going to have Dean do is just begin with, just all you need is going to be some tubing. Now, this is every exercise that you might see juniors doing, professionals doing, and there's a reason for it. We really want to prep our shoulders and really the posterior part of our shoulders as much as we can. Since we're playing such a push sport, we really need to make sure that all of these muscles back here are as engaged as we need them to be. So we're just going to go through a sequence that we call them I's, T's, W's, and I's, okay? So you may be good. So you're just going to see them just lift straight up. And you could do about 10 reps of these every single time. So when you're thinking of a good cue for yourself, if you're on your own, imagine somebody has their hand in the middle of his back, and you really just want to try to pinch those shoulder blades together. So really try to just draw in that posture as much as you can. So after that, he's going to transition now into some T's. Awesome. And after a couple reps of these, then he's going to go into a rowing motion. Perfect. And lastly, it's going to be those I's. So just straight down. Awesome. So before you hit any kind of big shot, before you're going into any kind of serve, any kind of forehand, any kind of backhand, it's key that you try to stabilize those joints as much as possible. The next one we're going to do, so that's a great upper body one for you to do. Now we're going to add in a lower body prep, and we call this one, a lateral walk, a monster walk, and all you need is the same elastic tubing you did for the upper body part. So you're just going to see Dean controlling the resistance, and all he's going to do is just now try to step out wide, and then you don't see his feet moving together, so he's constantly keeping tension on that band the whole time. So this is our go-to in terms of when we do any kind of movement prep for the lower body, you're going to see this exercise. Awesome. And then the last one, which is a good one to talk about, is it's a proprioceptive and also a stability exercise. So you really want to make sure that your ankles and your calves are as warm as possible to really try to minimize that risk of a calf injury, of an ankle injury. So all Dean is going to do is just bring one leg up to a 90-degree angle, and then he's just going to lift his arms up in a 90-degree angle as much as possible. And then you're just going to see already how much that ankle, how much that leg is starting to fire just from standing on one leg alone. So you don't need any kind of fancy equipment. You don't need much of anything except just the ability to come here. And if he found that easy, he could challenge his proprioception, his real balance, and try to close his eyes and do the same thing. And you could see it becomes even tougher. So you want to try to shoot for about a minute on one side, and then you could switch side and do 1 minute on the other. And like I said before, this is also a great self-check. So if you have one leg that has great balance and one leg where you're really, really struggling in your balance, you can kind of clue yourself to, oh, maybe I need to spend some more time doing some stability work on one leg versus the other. Awesome, Dean. Thank you so much. So throughout all of these, we were able to cover our need for stability, our need for mobility, our need for flexibility, and even better, that myofascial release that we started with. So these are all just simple things that you could add into your training program that are just going to enhance everything about your game and also just a great quality of life.